So hello and welcome back to my channel, Amani's Vibe. I have been promising my viewers, my followers, my subscribers that I was going to do a follow-up to all of the interviews that I've seen post MAFS USA, that's Chicago season 18. So I actually have sat and listened to various interviews so you won't have to. Let me run through the list of who I listened to. First, there was Carla. Well, before Carla, Juan was all over the internet, but I listened to all of his testimonials, his interviews. I listened to Carla. I watched Camille and Thomas, Alan and Eminem, Brandon, David. He's literally everywhere. And I will say a little bit reluctantly Madison, and I'll talk about that. Okay, so what I like to say that I do is, unlike many of the other people who do reviews, and my girl Queen E is back reviewing Married at First Sight USA because she left us. And she's definitely one of the reviewers that I followed at first, her, and then I would say like Kev on Stage and his wife with Married at First Sight, and then that led me to Cam and Pat and Couples Coach. And then I like Tamra Tattletales, and then because Queen left, I listened to her friend Chloe Johnson this past season. So I don't listen to them to like steal any of their ideas. If I am going to give an opinion piece, or I'm going to call what I do think pieces, I do my think pieces before I watch that. But I like to hear what other people think. What's really been interesting is that Queen started back, and so she's doing like a marathon of watching Married at First Sight season 18. And what has been so crazy is that, you know, we as viewers watched the wedding so long ago, and Queen is like picking up on things right away. One thing I know about Queen, she does not follow these people online. She does not care about the show outside of the show and her reviews. I learned that during Love Island. So it's been really interesting to hear the things that she's picked up on just on her own right away. And I don't even know if when I watched it, I noticed those things. I feel like I watch reality TV with this in mind. I love love. I'm a sucker for love, okay? But the only shows that I give think pieces on are Love Island USA and Married at First Sight USA. I could not watch all of the shows, so my hat goes off to all the reviewers who just watch every single show. Love is Blind, There's Something to Never Have, Never Met. I don't even know all these shows. I definitely don't have the brain space or the capacity for that. But I've watched Married at First Sight since season 1 with Jamie, season 1. And I've watched Love Island USA. That started during COVID, during a difficult time. So I've started watching that with Cara V, Alana, and I do follow some of them after and interact and stuff, you know, on Instagram, and like to see where their careers are going. But so that's just a little bit about how I do what I do. Now, what I did, so that you don't have to, is I listened to all these interviews. So I'm going to just talk about my thoughts on all of the post interviews. And out of everyone, I would say Juan did the most, and then David is doing the second most, because I swear he pops up on my YouTube like he's everywhere. But I'm going to start with the order that I watch the interviews. So the very first interview that I watched actually was Carla. And I really like Carla. Like on the show, I think it was hard for me to gauge like Carla. Like I could tell she was a free spirit. I could tell that she definitely indulged in extracurricular vaping. I thought she was funny, but at the same time, I found her to be very straightforward, very to the point, and she said what she had to say, and that she's definitely a real girl's girl. Like if she's in your corner, She believes in you and what you say. She's going to stand up for you. And she's very comfortable standing up for herself. And she's very confident. And I feel like the show definitely, and I've learned this, right? These shows, they edit. The editing and what the producers do is a huge part of the show, which means we never get to see the full story or the persona. The shows are edited in a way to give everybody a character. And definitely they wanted to make Carla look flaky and like, woo, 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 fluffy, fluffy. But definitely she's deeper than that. She had a really great interview. And I watched her interview after Juan. Juan was just everywhere. So maybe I'll start talking about Juan first. So I'll deal with Juan. Okay. So Juan, what I got, like when I watch his show, like, and looking back too, it's so great that Queen looked at these weddings, because what I remember the most was how emotional he was and how much he was crying before the interview. And then I just remember, like, when the guys were getting together, he was like dancing and very much the life of the party. And then when him and Carla went on the honeymoon, like he was up on the bed doing like a hoedown dance from North Carolina. Like, he was a lot. And I found him hard, to be honest, to figure out who Juan was. Because he had all of that stuff in his personality. And the way he was acting is actually how I thought Carla was going to act. But then he seemed very rigid about things like time and business. And he also seemed very focused on, I think, all of his entrepreneurial ideas and who he was. So I'm not sure if he really came on the show to find love. And then after the show, he just seemed to be really concerned about things that weren't happening, things that Carla wasn't saying, that Carla's family was not doing anywhere. I do not see Carla like infiltrating Reddit or getting people to post about Juan. Carla's very down to earth. That's my opinion. As much as she's like, woo, and, you know, likes to, you know, be lighthearted and do that kind of stuff, she's also like, she's got it going on. Like, she's very straightforward and to the point. So I did see Juan, who just seemed like in a bit of a panic about a secret that Carla and her family had, and he didn't want anybody to expose it. And the more he talked about it, to me, is the more he made people on social media and Reddit and everywhere question what this big secret was or is. I personally don't care. I don't. I just want Juan to be happy in who he is and just get comfortable. And I know it's very hard with social media. When you're on these platforms, like, I see it. I see it with people who are famous. I see it whenever people come off of Married at First Sight or Love Island. You have to grapple with going from being anonymous or just being somebody that you knew with your friends to now an entire world and internet. And as I've learned the term parasocials, getting involved and interacting with you. And Juan, I don't know if you've stopped talking. I'm assuming you have now. I'm just going to say, I watched the interview with Carla and she never divulged anything about your secret. Okay? Carla was pretty clear and to the point. She really went on the show to find love. She knew early on that her and Juan could not be a couple. She said pretty much she knew that. I think she said like before the honeymoon or during the honeymoon. But she really still stayed open to the process. And I can see why they matched her. And I honestly feel like her and Juan, like, if not for all of the strange dynamics that went on after, I actually think they would have been a good match, you know. But from what I gather, he has a girlfriend, or there was somebody that he was committed to before the show, and that's who he's with now. I've learned that, you know, from seeing different things. But Carla really just talked about herself, about her business sense. She did make it clear that after the show, see, a lot of them didn't see anything. They didn't see what we saw until after. So she definitely was going into business with Juan. It's something they talked about on the show and something they were actually going to do. But after she saw his interviews and what was happening and things that he was saying, at least in that first interview I saw, and I think that's the only one that Carla did. I'll have to check because it's a lot. She was pretty clear. No, she might have done one more. Carla, I feel like yes, she did. There's a Southern couple that does reviews, and Carla talked to them too. Also very straight up, but she was pretty clear that she was not going to go into business with Juan. That whatever ideas that she gave him, they hatched together. She was over and done with it. I think she did leave the show wanting to be his friend, but for her, his antics after the show are, what I gather, turned her off. And so I don't know, it's been weeks now since I've seen Juan like everywhere talking and pleading about this secret. So I hope that he's definitely settled down. So that was Carla, and both of the interviews that I saw with her, I'm just trying to get my notes up here. Both of the interviews that I saw with her, I thought were really good, and I feel that we got to see who she was, and I feel like the show also tried to paint her as somebody that didn't have a home, and Juan tried to do that too. And we remember at the beginning, she was in a place, and I feel like that's what happens on social media, is that one idea happens and then things just go like rabid. But she has a new place. She was living with her sister or a relative at the time. She comes from a really big family. She loves her new place. She's very good at business, and she's doing well for herself. So that's really what I got, and that she has no interest in divulging the secret. She literally doesn't care and is moving on with her life. So that's what I got from Carla. I told you what I felt about Juan. I think the next set of interviews I watched was on another show that has, I believe, the young ladies from Love is Blind and from Perfect Match. I don't watch any of these shows. I know Love is Blind is by the exact same producers as Married at First Sight, but I can only keep one show in my system, okay? I'm very loyal. Anyways, she did an interview. So she interviewed Alan and Eminem, as I call her, and Brandon. And so Alan, I'll talk about Alan. He's been on a few interviews. He's done solo interviews. He's been on this show. He was on this show with Michelle. I think it was Alan and Michelle, Eminem and Brandon. And how do I feel? I think I feel the same way as when I watched the show when he got really angry, that I still hope that he works through some stuff. I also saw, and I had to Google it because I don't know all these things, so he's like a spokesperson for, it looks like a type of liposuction, and I could be wrong. I literally never heard of this, right? And I think Alan is in pretty good shape. I feel like, again, these are my thoughts. I feel like the Madison stuff, deep down, did get to him and bother him. Because I feel like even him being a spokesperson for this, and like, Alan, I'm just here to say, like, you look fine. So I do hope that he kind of gets through that. And and he definitely is not going to be like close friends with David and Madison since the show. I feel like he's still working through that. He has a beautiful girlfriend. He's very much in love. He feels very appreciated. But even from the show, like, I feel like a lot of the material things, like his car or where he lives or those things, they seemed a bit important to him. And I feel like with his marriage to Madison, I always say from the time he came out in those broccoli shorts, like the broccoli draws, it was over. It might have been over a bit before that, but that was a thing. Like, and his, what's the word? You know, I have post-concussion syndrome. Is it the word propensity? But the way that he does like to do, I could think the crazy thing with the glasses, or when he talked about like meeting people, the latex stuff. It's a lot. But I think there's nothing wrong with being different. I think on the show we learned that he had some hardships growing up. But in the shows that he's done the interviews for, the followers and the people from those shows, they've all been disappointed that he really doesn't go into any detail about anything after the show. He just kind of talks about his girlfriend, how he's getting on with his life. And I think that's okay. That's what he chooses to do. Because he also had an interview with this British reviewer. I'm not a huge fan of his because I find him to be very chauvinistic. But but you know, we all have our bias, you know what I mean? But because Alan was on there, I did watch it, but he also wasn't able to get a lot out of Alan. And Alan did a few solo interviews, but he's really sticking to the script of like what life is like for him now, his girlfriend, being positive, you know, not dealing with the Madison and David stuff, that he's moved on from that. And, you know, and it's also been like almost a year and a half since this show was on. So these people are now reliving so many things that they really have worked on getting over. So from what I can tell, Alan, like, he's living his best life. He hangs out a lot with and Brandon. They all seem to be like, have a really good friend group. And they have a lot of fun. So of course, we all watch Brandon on the interviews, you know, like after the show. And I still, unfortunately, in Canada, never got to see that final show. Like, where are they now? That never showed in Canada. And I kept looking for it, and I still haven't seen that show. So, but I've watched these interviews. And so Brandon is definitely a card. Like, he's his own special person. He loves himself, and he loves Eminem. And it sounds like, again, these are my impressions because I do not know these people. I have followed his Instagram, you know, feed the seed or feed the soil or plant the seed, water the soil. That's his theme. And him and they've just been living their best life, like traveling. His kids are there. They have a new place. They got it together. She's not working in her profession right now. She's taking a break and just living her best life. And he does really love her. He's a little bit unorthodox in the things that he talked about. And I think we as the viewers were like, what is happening? What is Brandon talking about? Right? You know, when Pastor Cal does the, when Pastor Cal takes his glasses off, but Brandon is just a lot. You know, and it's interesting because he's the exact opposite to Ike or Ikechi, right? What is also very interesting, because Queen E is now watching these weddings, which made me look back at the wedding and how Ikechi really seemed like he liked her. He really seemed like he liked Eminem. However, his friends and the things they were saying, and Queen caught up on it too, like the fact that he tried to be on this show before and he just didn't really seem ready for a relationship, and then his wedding was so performative. I know that since the show, Ikechi, I don't think he's done any interviews. I know he's done like a visual art show, I think, because, you know, he does visual arts and different things, and he works with young people. And it feels like since the show, he just really kept to himself and been reflective. And I know he said maybe that he regrets like not taking part in a lot of things and not getting to know people as well. But I believe Juan and Thomas and Camille, that they're still in touch with him. That's who I can remember offhand. And I think, yeah, David and Madison too. So anyway, just giving some thoughts. Like, I hope Ikechi, that, you know, he can work through whatever happened to him on this show. But Eminem, it seems like she worked so hard and she put her love life aside, and she was engaged before, but she wasn't ready with that person. But she was really ready for marriage by any means necessary. Like, if you can attach um like wording to Eminem, MM's like devotion to her marriage. It was by any means necessary. She was going to stand by her man, stand by her husband. And she did that with Akechi until the end of ends. And so the Brandon thing for us looking just looks sudden, like all of a sudden there's Brandon, but there was a lot of time between the last show and then even the introduction of Brandon to him, to Eminem. So when we watched it, it just looked crazy. Like, okay, Ike, that's over. Now she's with Brandon, right? And now she's with this guy that wants to marry her right away and just wants everybody to marry them. And so it just looked like so out of control. And like, is MM okay? Like, is she taking time for herself? You know, does she really love herself? Like, what is up? But that's why I think I always try to go on social media, see what's going on. And so from what I can see, and again, it's almost a year and a half since the show aired and that her and Brandon have been together. I know a lot of people were saying like he's going to leave her after he just wanted to be on the show, but he was literally on the show for 5 minutes, and that 5 minutes of fame, like, it's, you know, it seems like he's really into drones and like video, like vlogging and stuff. He does all this neat stuff with his videos. He definitely was trying to be everywhere after the show. There's a page, MAFS fan, and she always gives a lot of secrets and stuff. So I'm always reading a lot of things, but I kind of don't let it change my own thoughts. I just find it so interesting to get different people's viewpoints. Call me strange. I like that though, but yeah. So from what I can tell and from what MM says, I can only base it on what people say and what I see. She is very happy. And I think she was just ready to love. You know, like that show Ready, she was ready to be in love by any means necessary. And she has found that with Brandon. And honestly, what can I do? I wish them all the happiness in the world. I don't want him to hurt her, but he seems like he really loves her, and she just seems to really just, they are a unit. Like his two kids, her, him, everything from sports to travel to partying, they are living their best life, and MM seems really happy. I haven't really seen her do other interviews, or her and Brandon. I've just seen her on that show, seen her, you know, talk a couple of times, and I've seen some of the posts on IG. So that's what I'm basing this on. Brandon, you know, that I think I've said what I had to say in that last part talking about MM. Like, Brandon is a card. Brandon is who he is, and you know, it takes a special and strong kind of woman to also love somebody with all that energy. So he's found MM and she's found him, and again, I wish him all the happiness. Who else? So I also watched Michelle. I kind of forgot that I watched Michelle in an interview. I'm not saying she's forgettable. I'm just saying that I kind of forgot. But I watched her on the same show where Carla did an interview. And I'm trying to think if I saw her. And then she was also on the show with the reality host as well. So from Michelle, this is hard. And I'm just going to be real, because I think it's hard to forget how she treated David. It was terrible. It was terrible to watch. And I feel like she's on a little bit of a kind of a, you know, redemption tour too. I think she, you know, she has seen it. I didn't get to see that show after, but I know she did apologize to David, like for real, for real. And she's living her best life. You know, a lot of them live close to each other. So, you know, I believe that I'm trying to remember, I don't want to be wrong, but I feel like she hangs out with Carla quite a bit. But they're all friends, you know, except for some people, of course. They're all kind of friends after the show. I feel like Michelle also has her circle. She's working on her career. She looks fantastic. She's really into fitness. She likes to travel. And she did mention that she's dating now. She's dating. She doesn't know if it's something that's going to go anywhere. So that's kind of my update on what Michelle been doing since the show. I don't really follow her that much on social media, but you know, I feel like she's doing a lot of self-reflection as well. And even in the show, when it started, she did say it's hard for her to get over things, that she's very critical. And from day one, when she heard about David and the basement from the wedding, because when I look back at the wedding just yesterday, because Queen Eve's looking at these reviews, David looked really good, you know. He must have taken his hair out during the wedding, but he had it pulled back. It looked nice. And Michelle, she didn't look like she thought he was deplorable. And they kissed like I couldn't remember, but it really didn't look so bad at the beginning. I honestly think it's when he started to talk, it was over for her. And she just treated him like the dirt on the bottom of somebody's shoe, like the bad taste in your mouth that you can never get over. So I am glad that she's been able to self-reflect. I'm glad she's apologized, and I'm glad she's getting on with her life, and I'm glad she's dating, okay? Now I'm going to talk about David. And I'm so sorry if I forget people. My brain does that, but I was trying to remember, but I think it's just like Akechi, right? Because it was like Akechi and MM, Carla and Juan, Camille and Thomas, Alan and Madison, and David and Michelle, right? Okay, I don't think I missed anybody. Anyways, David. In Toronto, these have these commercials, City TV everywhere. David is everywhere doing interviews with everybody. I don't even know these people he's doing interviews with, but it just kept popping up on my YouTube or on IG or everywhere. So I can't watch it a lot. It's a lot. He's a lot too. He's a lot. A little bit crass, David. He's a lot. But we got that on the show, you know. He's his own person. A lot of energy, definitely believes in being positive. And I'll tell you what I got from the interviews, though. When he said that he wanted a wife who was a white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. And we were all like, huh? You know, just like she wanted a light-skinned black man. I mean, we've learned after that they also said more than that. But listen, when you listen to David talk about his upbringing, right? And he's a mix of he's African American, Latino, I believe. I don't want to say the wrong word. I'm so sorry. Of Latin origin. He's like a mix of different cultures, right? So he's like European, Latino, African American. He's got all that. And what it sounds like is where he grew up, he had a bit of a hard time, and maybe people weren't that nice to him. And he ended up in a private school. And he ended up in schools where the majority of the people he went to school with were people of European backgrounds. And that is what really influenced him. And that is where he found maybe more of his acceptance. And he's carried that. And I'm not a therapist. This is a think piece. These are just my thoughts, but he's carried that into his adult life too, and also that's why it's his preference. I have no idea if he's dated like all cultures, all sights and sounds. I couldn't really gather what his dating background was from the interviews, but he definitely does, you know, lean more towards like the swirl. We are a product of our childhood. That's one thing I can tell you. You know, they always say family ties that bind. Is that book there on my shelf? Oh no, I think that's in the meantime there. Sorry, but family ties that bind. That's one of the things is like we are all a product of our childhood. I am a believer in therapy. I think it's important. I think as adults, you know, we're hearing all these terms now online, you know, trauma bonding. There's just so many new terms. It's hard for me to keep up. Like a lot of these terms didn't even exist for me before, but it's true. And I can speak to myself here. It's true. Like, we are a victim of our childhood and the things that we went through. And even sometimes we don't realize it's those things that we went through with our family as children. Those formative years have a lasting and prolonged effect on our life. I know that. I, as a youth, dealt with a lot of racism, and I was not in schools where there were a lot of Black kids that looked like me, and we immigrated to Canada from the Caribbean, so it was a whole mood. But this isn't about me. So there's a lot of things like, so for me, I'll just say this. Here's why I'm making the parallel. Because I went through all that and all the racism and the being told to go back where I come from and dealing with that type of visceral hate at a very young age as a child, when I learned Black history, that's really what changed my life, because I wasn't surrounded with a lot of like role models coming up. It's one of the things I was talking to a Gen Z yesterday, asking her, like, who is there for you now? Like, between social media, pop culture, what couples are there? Like, what prominent, like, Black couples or young couples do we see, right? This is another topic, but I'm just saying. So I feel too like we are all a result of how we grew up, where we grew up, in our experiences. And David, he is a culmination of his experiences. And so this is why he has his preferences. It is what it is. I'm not him. And I think when we're watching things or people online, I feel like people online are even harder on these people from the shows. I'm not sure why. I think because I've always been able to separate. It's the same thing. Like I always say, like, I post on social media, but I live in the real world. He talks a lot about, being loved and being positive and being a good guy and all those things. I remember he was saying all those things to Michelle too. And Michelle really crushed him, like, straight up. I don't agree with what happened. I can tell you that. It's just hard for me. I think it's hard for me because of Alan. But then at the end of the day too, Alan was also grown and could see. I think he knew that Madison wasn't really interested in him. But again, they were part of the show and he committed to the show, right? With David though, I mean, he was crushed. Like, she really treated him with disdain. And I think going back and looking at that again, I don't know what that was like. And remember, we were all heralding him because he stayed so positive and she was terrible. She was like, talk to me, don't talk to me. I don't want to answer that. I don't want to tell you about my family. Like, it was just constant, right? And so then you kind of hear that he was just by himself. I don't think, like, on that honeymoon that he was with Madison. I think maybe the attraction started there and their conversations, but I don't think he was, like, all up in Madison at the, no, I said the reunion, I mean the honeymoon. Yeah, I just think, like from what they say, he was just by himself a lot on the island. Like, can you imagine? I just want us to think about that. Being on a show, Married at First Sight, getting married to somebody of your preference, them treating you like dirt, being on a honeymoon in a romantic place where all the couples are doing things and having a romantic time, except for Juan and Carla. And you're being treated that way. And yes, I do commend him for that. I do, because I couldn't do it. And he didn't snap. And when a Black man snaps, that's a show. When a Black man snaps, like, it's all over. So I think he did really good with his self-control for how terrible he was being treated. And now, of course, everybody's turned off. I think the thing that's hard, okay, so number one, David, and I learned this watching an interview, he's never watched Married at First Sight before, knew nothing about the show. And I think this is very clear to us as the audience. He knew nothing about the show, y'all. That's why when he got married, He told Madison his entire life story in 5 minutes. I live in my parents' basement. I smoke. I cuss a lot. I this, I that. Like, he blurted all this stuff out because he's never seen the show before. He had nothing to, he knew nothing. He just went in blind and just wanted to get married. And I think he's just that type of person, right? Like, just say what you feel type of person. I think that him and Brandon can probably be really good friends. Like, I don't know if they have a social circle outside of this, but I can see them hanging out and getting along. I'm not being facetious, for real. But think about that. He's never seen the show before. He has nothing to base it on, and then he's being treated terribly, okay? So here's what I'll say. I'm glad he found love. I am glad. I'm glad he found his person. I am not sure they should be proud of it, of how they found each other and what they did. And I think that's what we as viewers have a problem with. I just think, I wish, again, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. That's what my mother would always say when she was alive, you know. I just wish that they were honest. Okay? But now I'm going to go to the interview I watched with Madison, because this ties into this. Madison had seen it before. Maybe not so much a huge follower, but she'd seen it before. Another thing I want to touch on is that, yeah, this show has been cast for years. All these shows, like, not everybody auditions or tries to get on. It's not easy. Yes, casting agents hit up people in their DMs. Even some of the Ashley and Anthony hit up in the DMs, y'all. Okay? Anthony was hit up in the DMs. That's how a lot of people end up on these shows. So I think as viewers, you need to just get over that. This is how it is. It is what it is. But out of it, some people still really find love, okay? So I just want to talk about Madison now. Madison was the one who didn't want to, I think, more so didn't want to hurt Alan and didn't know what to do. And you could see it. Like I said, she'd be blinking. Like when I was talking about the show, whenever she was lying or having a hard time, she'd blink. And you could tell she wasn't attracted to him at all. But you could tell she just didn't want to say that. She didn't want to hurt him. And I don't know. It seemed, she said like they had these great deep discussions, and he seemed to know, and he did ask her a few times. He did say point blank, like, yo, if you're not feeling this, let me know. But she just wasn't strong enough to tell him. And it's easy to say it on the outside. It's hard to hurt people. I'm not good at it. It's hard. So in that way, I can sympathize only a little bit. But I just wish that she was honest. And that's the thing. This show, people have left the marriage early. I know the show doesn't encourage it. I know there's a contract they signed that they have to finish out the show. That's also another reason that people stay. This is a contractual agreement, and it is a real marriage. But I think in this circumstance where people were just in marriages that were not working, I don't know. I think, you know, I know the experts kept trying to encourage them. That's just what they have to do. That's what the show has to do, because they have a lot of time to film. They literally had one couple, Thomas and Camille, like literally. So I get what happens behind the scenes. But Madison and David are happy. She is very happy. She does regret how she handled it. And again, it's been a year and a half since the show. They're living their best life. They're both party people. She loves to party. She's traveling the world. She parties with her friends. She parties with him. They've been to Barbados, and they're just enjoying each other. And, you know, they're dealing with a lot of animosity. Like, the internet is cruel. So that's it. I mean, that's the only thing I can say. I really am not pleased with how they went about it. And I feel like Alan was hurt the most. I feel like Michelle was just more like on a, you know, detective thing. She just wanted to prove that text was sent to somebody else because she didn't like him, and it gave her something to stand on. Like, look, this is why I didn't like him, because look, he would have been a cheater, you know. Yeah, I don't know, y'all. It's hard. And dating is hard. I'm not even dating. I've been single since Jesus was on the cross, like I told y'all. And that's another topic. I don't know if I want to do a think piece on the Tracy Ellis Ross interview. I haven't even watched the interview, but I completely relate to her because I completely relate. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. Okay, and so now for my last, who do I have next? So I did watch the interview with Madison. That's kind of all I got from it. Her and David are happy. She does regret how she handled it. She wasn't honest, but I think at the end of it, they're both happy. I haven't seen them. They did one interview together, I think. Did I see David and Madison together? And then she did one on her own. So, Thomas and Camille are only couple that stayed married. And I never got to see the show where Thomas was talking to his twin about, I guess, like the passion and not having that. So I never got to see that. A lot of people talked about that too. But again, it's been a year and a half since the show has happened. They've been together. Thomas and Camille remind me a lot of Brianna and Vincent, and of Nicole, and I can't remember her husband's name, though I just watched her interview with Camille and Thomas. So I watched Thomas and Camille on the interview with Nicole and her husband, and I watched Thomas and Camille on another interview, and I just watched Camille on another interview with the Connors coach. There's too many coaches, y'all. I follow the couples coach, Cam and Pat. I didn't know about the Connors. But I really did my duty in following up with these interviews after the show. So Camille and Thomas are our most practical, down-to-earth, and they're older couple, right? They are happily married. They're working on their marriage, and they have the deep conversations. They're taking therapy. They've traveled. They love each other. So, and I knew they were together, but when the show, when it ended everything, and then his social media just had Tomcat, there was nothing on it, and she had some of her stuff. You could see, like, she even posted it, when can I post this? Like, she was holding back on all the pictures and all the adventures and all the things they did because it's been so long, and they had to wait till the show aired before they could say or do anything. That has to be crazy, like a year and a half. And now it's the same thing. And I talked about the editing, and I knew that whole swag thing, oh my God, like, I knew that was something that the producers and editing just harped on. And I knew I knew that they had a great relationship, and they had to have something that was a conflict for us, the viewers. And that's the one part I don't like about the show. So if anybody from Married at First Sight happens upon my think pieces, we, the viewers, just like the love. We don't like the drama. And I'm very glad that this season they didn't do all the foreshadowing of all the crazy, so that we could actually enjoy the relationships and learn about what happened, okay? But early on, there definitely was a whole couple switch thing that was all over the place, but I just try to ignore it as best as I could and not guess who it was. But anyways, Camille and Thomas are happy, and they're working on their marriage, and they're working on their love and their communication and all of those things. And Thomas too, like, I will say, like, yeah, you can't help but worry a bit when you hear that he was in a 9-year relationship, he cheated, and then he left that relationship. Camille had to take all that in. And I commend her for her maturity in dealing with him too. But again, she was really ready for marriage. I'm not sure that he was ready in the way that these are my thoughts. I feel like he wanted what his friends and his brother had, and that he was missing out on that. I feel like that was part of the impetus for him being on this show. And I think it's amazing that all of their friend groups and family groups, that they're all really close and they get along, and that they're doing good. And I like I say this, I want the best for them. I really like Thomas and Camille. I like that Camille's more outgoing. One of the things Camille said is that we as the viewers missed out on a lot of the fun things that they did. You know, we didn't get to see that thing with the babies or their adventures. Like, they did some, like, kind of, you know, thrill-seeking type of things. And we didn't get to see them. We just got to see kind of, like, the boring side of them. But they've also traveled, and they're having a good time. And I do wish the best for them. Again, they remind me a lot of Vincent and Brianna and Nicole and her husband, because her husband was quieter too. And so that was a very long think piece on all of the reviews that I saw post season 18 of Married at First Sight. And this was a lot. I even felt emotional. But yeah, I just love, and I just want to thank you for subscribing to my channel. I know a lot of my viewers are really like Love Islanders, but that's okay. I still have some people that look at my Married at First Sight stuff too, and that's it. And like I always say, that's what's up. But you also know, please, if you like what you hear, you know, my style's a little bit different. Please like and subscribe to Amani's Vibe, and I'll see you the next time I have some words to share. And that's what's up.